The story I'm about to tell still haunts me to this day. Why am I writing this here? All I need is to find answers. Honestly, I've stopped being afraid of being ridiculed. Someone might think I'm crazy. So be it. In my situation, there's not much left to lose. In the end, any information, even the smallest clue about the reasons behind everything that's happened to me, might save my life. For a year now, I've been waking up at night from nightmares, sleeping behind a locked door with the light on in my bedroom. Every night before bed, I lock my bedroom door with 2 locks and a bolt, even though I live alone. I've become overly irritable, barely talk to anyone, and every evening, after locking myself in my bedroom, I drink at least 5 shots of vodka just to calm my nerves and not be afraid to close my eyes. You're probably wondering, are you an idiot? Maybe I am. It all started a little over a year ago when I moved into a new apartment. Yes, it was in an old building, far from the city center, and yes, I had to take out a loan to buy it. But honestly, at the time, I was damn happy to have my own place. 2 rooms, a spacious kitchen, just enough appliances and furniture, even if they weren't new. Wasn't that happiness for a single young man? I did the renovations myself, slowly but surely fixing up every corner of my modest home. I replaced almost all the plumbing, rewired the electricity, and patched up the furniture. The only appliance I had to replace was the washing machine, and even then, the old one still worked. Except during the spin cycle, when it would screech and bang against the tiles so loudly it sounded like an epic battle between Autobots and Decepticons was happening in the bathroom. Naturally, neither I nor the neighbors could stand it, so another loan later, a shiny new washing machine took the place of its rowdy predecessor. But the junk on the balcony remained untouched for a long time, especially since it wasn't even mine. It was left behind by the previous owners. It was a literal mountain of ancient building materials, cardboard boxes filled with books and clothes, shoes, tools, and other outright garbage that, under the slogan, might come in handy later, never made it to the dump. Someone else in my place might have been excited to dig through this dump in search of valuable antiques and vintage trinkets. But for me, cleaning the balcony was just one of the most unpleasant and joyless ways to waste a day off. From the moment I moved into the new apartment in March, I successfully ignored the balcony junk, until summer arrived. The heat made it necessary to keep the apartment ventilated, but the balcony window, which opened inward, couldn't even open halfway because of the junk piled up over years, or even decades. So, waking up early on a Saturday and preparing a bunch of bottomless trash bags, I stepped forward to meet my fate. I threw out almost everything my eyes landed on. A cassette player, wow, missing every button, with a broken plastic casing. What a useful item. Into the bag you go, buddy. A torn rubber boot. Just one. Why was it left behind? What kind of situation would have to occur for someone to say, "Oh my God, what luck. Thank goodness I didn't throw out that single torn rubber boot. Without it, we'd all be doomed." A whole box of free classified newspapers. Compared to everything else, this wasn't even the most useless item. At least I could dig out the oldest newspaper from the bottom, wipe away a stingy tear, and see what was being sold and for how much 10 years ago, before tossing it into the trash with the rest of the junk. Hour after hour, bag after bag, I cleared the unfortunate 3 square meters of junk. 7 huge trash bags and only 4 useful items. Even I was surprised by that ratio. After the last plastic bag found its place in the dumpster, I went back home to throw out the last thing that even remotely reminded me of the junk that had once cluttered the balcony. An old, dusty, and scorched rug hanging on the wall shared with the neighbor's balcony. As it turned out, it wasn't hanging there for no reason. At first, I was surprised to see a wooden door behind it, leading to the neighbor's balcony. Yes, I knew that back in Soviet times, neighboring balconies were connected by fire escapes, but I'd never heard of doors leading from one balcony to another. That same evening, I went outside and confirmed there was no mystery. Absolutely all the balconies were connected by such doors, and the last balcony on each floor had a hatch and a fire escape. It was a logical design in case of a fire or emergency. You could reach the other end of the building and descend via the stairs. Each balcony had 2 such doors, but mine, being cornered, had only one. After Googling it, I felt even more at ease. This layout did exist and, though not widespread, was occasionally used in construction. Later, however, it was abandoned, because after the USSR collapsed, everyone suddenly stopped being loyal friends and comrades, and no one wanted neighbors on their balcony. So, the openings were often bricked up. In my case, it seemed hiding the door behind a rug was enough. And while the former owner of the apartment was more than satisfied with this solution, it didn't work for me at all. So, a plan formed on its own. I needed to talk to the neighbors, remove the door, and brick up the opening. It would be expensive, but leaving it as it wasn't an option either. The next day, full of determination, I stood at the neighbor's door. But no one answered. Not that day, not the next, not even a week later. Worse, it felt like no one had lived in that apartment for a long time. This assumption was confirmed by other residents of the building. My downstairs neighbor turned out to be very hospitable. She invited me in for tea, treated me to homemade pies, and told me that no one had lived in that apartment for about 5 years. Before that, A young couple had lived there for about 10 years, but as soon as they had a child, they suddenly left within a month. The apartment had been empty ever since. Well, that at least worked in my favor since there was no need to negotiate with neighbors. Nothing stood in the way of my plan. Another day off. 10 in the morning, the time when most of the building was already awake. Of course, the unlucky ones, especially those who had celebrated the end of the work week a little too hard, had to change their plans from sleeping until noon to cursing the neighbor with a sledgehammer and a hangover. But what could I do? The work ahead was serious. Get rid of the old door, clean up the mess, meet the truck delivering bricks and cement, haul everything up to my floor, and of course, brick up the cursed doorway neatly by evening. Following the first part of the plan, I started breaking down the door. Honestly, I finished the task much faster than expected. By the second strike, what had once resembled a wooden door turned into dusty, rotten debris. Another favorite bottomless black plastic bag. Some more time was spent cleaning the balcony of the remaining debris, so there were about an hour and a half left until the building materials arrived. Now, with no barrier between my balcony and the neighbors, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to step onto their balcony. There was almost nothing on it, just some trash covered in a thick layer of dust. Every step I took left a clear footprint on the floor. The glass between the balcony and the apartment was so dirty and dusty that I couldn't see anything through it, even if I pressed my face against it. After hesitating for a couple of seconds, after all, this could be considered trespassing or breaking and entering, I tried pulling the handle of the door leading into the neighbor's apartment. First gently, then harder. The result was the same. The door was locked from the inside. Well, I didn't really want to go in anyway. I returned to my apartment and waited for the building materials. The brickwork was done by dinner time. It turned out quite decent. The bricks lay neatly, and all that was left was to wait for the cement to dry, patch up the opening, and forget about it forever. And that's when all the nonsense I wanted to tell you about began. That same night, I woke up to relieve myself and noticed something strange. A noise. Some unnatural, disgusting, vile sound. The closer I got to my bed, the louder it seemed to become. When I listened closely, it sounded like it was coming from the empty neighbor's apartment. I don't know how to describe it, like someone snoring with water in their mouth or something. There was grunting, sniffling, and gurgling. I didn't pay it much attention and went back to sleep. After all, maybe it was just the old lady downstairs snoring. Anything's possible. But the next morning, when I went to the balcony to finish the job, I was in for a very unpleasant surprise. Part of the brickwork above the door had been partially destroyed. And the bricks weren't on my balcony. It felt like they'd been dismantled from the other side, from the apartment where no one had lived for years. At that point, of course, I wasn't thinking about anything supernatural. The first logical thought, my own incompetence, was to blame. Maybe the cement mixture wasn't thick enough, or I'd done something wrong. At least it wasn't the first time I'd failed to get something right on the first try. Either way, the problem was annoying. All the cosmetic work had to be postponed for another day. The hole had to be bricked up again, and while waiting for the mixture to dry, I spent the rest of my day off doing something else. But the events of the next 2 days shocked me. On Monday morning, I stepped onto the balcony, and what did I see? Yes, another hole in the brickwork. And this, damn it, wasn't funny anymore. I had absolutely no idea what could be causing this problem. So, that evening after work, I spent a few more hours re-bricking the hole. And to figure out why the bricks kept falling out, I placed a stool on the balcony with a camera on it. I set it to night mode and programmed it to take photos when motion was detected. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. It felt like I was hearing that awful sound again, though this time it seemed to be coming from downstairs, from the old lady neighbor's apartment. The whole situation was unsettling. Every fiber of my being screamed that something wasn't right. That moment when you're terrified but don't know why. Irrational fear. Being afraid of a danger you can see. A car crash, a terrorist attack, or a serial killer is one thing. But being afraid to close your eyes because you might see something you shouldn't, that's something else entirely. That night I had a very strange dream. So strange that I remembered every detail. I was walking at night down an unfamiliar street covered in snow. High rises surrounded me, their windows all dark. A couple of lonely streetlights created tiny islands of light, a sense of dread. I knew I was the only one in this place. It grew colder, the snowdrifts under my feet grew deeper. The wind picked up, making it hard to breathe. Looking for shelter, I entered the first apartment building I saw. A pitch black hallway, trash on the floor, and a gaping void where the elevator doors should have been. I climbed the stairs, and the steps behind me crumbled, cutting off my retreat. Ahead, light spilled from one of the apartments. Something drew me straight toward it. My heart pounded in my temples, the fear so intense I started crying. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but I kept walking. Inside, the apartment was a horrific mix, a metal frame wrapped in flesh. Blood dripped from the ceiling. I was dragged to the darkest corner. Something was there. Something small, angry, and vile. I couldn't focus my eyes on it. Then everything froze. A ringing in my ears, my heart seemingly stopping. I saw myself lying in bed. From the wall, something repulsive slithered toward my body. Something that looked like nothing but guts and entrails. It wheezed, grunted, and gurgled. And just as it got close to me, I woke up. Needless to say, that day I was far from well rested. I didn't even want to look at my unshaven face in the mirror. I subconsciously dragged out my morning routine. I took longer showers, brushed my teeth longer, made breakfast slower, and sipped my coffee slowly. Some sixth sense whispered, "Hey, don't go out on the balcony. There's nothing good there." I delayed the moment as long as I could. And yes, I guess I wasn't even surprised. The hole was even bigger this time. I called my boss and took the day off. What had seemed like a ridiculous joke was turning into a serious problem. Pouring myself a strong coffee, I plugged the memory card into my laptop. As it turned out, the camera had only taken a few photos overnight. Until 4 a.m., everything was normal. The first photo was taken around 4:15, and there was nothing unusual in it. But then, judging by the photos, absolute madness ensued. I watched as frame by frame, brick by brick, they fell into the darkness of the doorway. Some unseen force loosened them slightly, visible in the faint movements in the photos, before yanking them out abruptly. 18 photos in total. The last brick disappeared at 5:14, almost an hour after the first. That was the 17th photo. For over an hour, nothing happened. Then the camera took the 18th and final photo. Here it is. Saying I was terrified would be an understatement. I stared at the photo for a long time, and with every second, the urge to drop everything and run far away from this apartment grew stronger. But pulling myself together, I decided it was just a camera glitch or maybe a trick of the shadows. Believing that some monstrosity lived behind the wall, trying to crawl into my apartment every night. What could be dumber than that? I decided I'd patch up the hole one last time, and if it appeared again, I'd bolt from this house as fast as I could. Gathering my strength, I went to the nearest construction site, where I traded half a liter of vodka for 24 bricks, with delivery to my door included. This time I didn't skimp on the cement. But this time, I decided not to set up the camera. It would be better if, upon seeing the familiar hole again, I'd just pack my things and leave, rather than go through those terrifying photos again. Truly, ignorance is bliss. Imagine my surprise when the next morning, the brickwork was exactly as I'd left it the night before. It was the most genuine relief. At that moment, I even felt like a fool. I'd been so scared of some nonsense that I'd considered running away from my own apartment. What an idiot. I went to work that day in a great mood. Sure enough, no hole appeared the next day, or the day after that. With a clear conscience, I finished the balcony repairs, and the past events felt like nothing more than a silly story. But as you can guess, my joy was premature. From that moment on, every night I slept horribly, as if I hadn't slept at all. My head ached, my bones and back hurt, dark circles under my eyes bloodshot. At work, I couldn't focus. I stumbled at every step, my eyes closing on their own. This couldn't go on for long. I knew I'd either get injured or be fired for my terrible performance. Doctors shrugged, prescribed sleeping pills and sedatives, talked about nervous strain, and even signed me off on sick leave. For several days, I lay at home without even getting out of bed. But the overwhelming fatigue didn't leave me. No matter how much I slept, I couldn't feel rested. It drove me up the wall. Every night I heard that awful sound. Each time it seemed closer and closer, as if someone were breathing right into my ear. That sloshing, wheezing snoring. It haunted me even during the day. Honestly, I thought I was losing my mind. Trying to kill time and distract myself, I started gathering information about the neighbor's apartment. I don't know why. Maybe subconsciously, I understood that all my problems stemmed from it. I don't know. There was very little information, practically none. The scraps I managed to find weren't even publicly available. I learned that the family who had lived in that apartment had indeed struggled to have a child for a long time. After almost 10 years of marriage, they finally succeeded. Then something terrible happened. About a month after the child was born, it simply disappeared, right from its crib. Only 2 small articles from obscure local newspapers mentioned it. The investigation, as it turned out, led nowhere. The child wasn't found after a week, nor after a month. The family moved from the apartment to some village, and that was where the information ended. No names, no surnames. Meanwhile, I was getting worse. One night, I felt a crushing weight on my chest. My temperature soared above 39 degrees C. Sweat poured out so much the sheets beneath me could be wrung out. My heart pounded. I was seriously scared and called an ambulance. That same day, lying in a hospital bed under an IV, I managed to sleep properly for the first time in ages. And the next day, too. By the third day, I think I started to understand what was happening. After being discharged and returning home, I discovered that the entire opening on the balcony had been dismantled, brick by brick. Yes, it scared me, but I wasn't planning to stay in that apartment much longer anyway. I just set up the camera, in my bedroom where my bed stood, right against the wall shared with that cursed apartment. Same as before, night mode, motion-activated photos. Then, packing only the essentials, I went to sleep at the nearest hostel. Surprisingly, I slept well. The next morning, I returned to the apartment and started reviewing the photos. There were only 4. In the first, ripples appeared on the wall, as if it were made of water, not brick. In the second, the ripples intensified and the room grew darker. In the third, something vile emerged from the ripples. And in the fourth, why describe it? Here's the photo. I didn't even bother packing much. Just the essentials: my laptop, documents, some clothes, and whatever else I could grab while stuffing my suitcase. A lot of time has passed since then. I lost a ton of time and money, but I sold the apartment. No, I'm not upset about it at all. In fact, I even moved to another city. Found another job, lost a bunch of money again, but screw those pieces of paper. What scares me the most is that now, living 1,000 kilometers away from that cursed apartment, I've started hearing those sounds again when I fall asleep. Very faintly, as if from the street. But it's killing me. I'm terrified. I sleep behind a locked door, even though I don't believe it'll help. I drink before bed because if I can't escape this, what else can I do? I've become nervous and sleep terribly. Last night, I heard those sounds very close, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know what conclusions you'll draw from what I've written, because there are far more questions than answers. But I beg you, if you know what this is and how to fight it, tell me. I can't take it anymore.